Welcome to you all. My name is Andrew Chung, artistic producer of London Symphonia, and I've got with me two special guests today ahead of our season finale concert, Beethoven, Shostakovich, and Marsh. We indeed do have Marsh here. We've got Alexis Marsh. Hello, Alexis.
Hello.
And we have our principal flute, Laura Chambers. Hello, Laura.
Hi.
So thanks for joining me. We want to talk about the new piece that will be premiered, a world premiere, as part of our concert. And yeah, I'm just so excited about this. This is just awesome. So I suppose that let's just dive right in. So I suppose that the story of the creation of this new flute concerto starts with you, Laura. So we as London Symphonia, we asked you to perform a concerto, and you know in trying to decide what that piece would be, uh, tell me about the process as you recall it.
Yeah, so I mean, I was super honored to be asked. I'm coming up on not quite this one, but next will be my 10th year with the orchestra. So it feels really wonderful to have this kind of like amazing opportunity to cap off that decade of everything that I've learned and gain from being a part of this beautiful orchestra and community. And so I sat down to think about what I wanted to play. And the flute, although there are many concertos, it's not like we don't have ones that are written. There were a ton in the Baroque period that were done. The flute has kind of a funny history where it sort of drops out as a solo instrument. Uh, re for the most part, there are a couple of tiny pieces in the Romantic period with orchestra because our instrument just wasn't quite loud enough to exist as it did at that time over the big orchestra. And then it kind of resurfaces around the early 1900s. And of the sort of every time in every instrument, there's sort of like concertos, I think, that become popularized. They're the ones that sort of have lasting impression. There's the Eber for flute, the Mozart concertos, everyone's quite familiar with those. There's a piece by Nielsen, by Lieberman. So we do have repertoire, but I have played some of those as a student. I was lucky enough to do a couple through concerto competitions, and I just wasn't feeling super inspired. The Eber is a beautiful piece, but it wasn't what I was kind of like really wanting to do with this opportunity. And so I was like, what if I just asked them if I could propose a new piece? Like, this would be fantastic. And I did. So I said, what would you guys be open to doing something that's new?
Terrible.
I have this really good idea. Alexis and I have known each other for a very long time. We met in our master's degrees when we were studying at the University of Southern California. And I've sort of, we became friends and I've stayed in touch and watched her career and watched all the beautiful music she's been writing and the cool projects she's been doing. And even though she's living in the States, she's a Canadian. And I was like, I have been waiting for an opportunity. There was, during the pandemic, there was a bit of a time where I was like, maybe we'll be able to do something. And we sort of started a conversation and then things kind of drifted away. So I was like, this is it. This is the moment. So I introduced her as an idea to you, Andrew, and to sort of the committee, the artistic committee. And you guys were super, super open and excited about the idea, which is one of the things I love about our orchestra is that we're always kind of like game to go for it. And so
Mhm.
that's how that started. Yeah.
Well, I think from where I sit, I just love seeing our performers take on projects that they're really passionate about. And you did a really amazing chamber music program and co-curated that. And I think that our people get to grow when we allow them to follow their passions. And gosh, it's so different following the path of a new commission rather than plucking something off the shelf that's been performed and has been recorded many, many times. So Alexis, when Laura first told me about you and shared your with me your background as a highly successful composer for film, for TV, you're a songwriter for the band Diane, a multi-instrumentalist. I thought, okay, this is an awesome choice. Thank you, Laura Chambers. So from your perspective, is this something you had to carefully consider? Or is it something that you've been looking to do for some time to compose a concerto?
No, I feel like there's a little bit of like magic or something because I was on tour. I remember being on tour driving between dates somewhere in the Midwest, I think, with a band called Sun June, playing guitar, not doing my own thing, which was kind of rare. Um, just not that I didn't do it, but just I rarely get asked to play with other bands, but I love doing that kind of thing. And we had some long drive, and I was listening to I'm not sure what exactly I was listening to. I think there was like Max Richter and then like just went on this little like, oh, what about this? What about this piece? And so I was listening to all this music and I was thinking like, man, I would really love the opportunity to write for an orchestra without it being to picture. And I wonder if I could do that. I feel scared of that kind of thing. And I had remembered Laura asking if I would be interested in 2020 and I didn't feel ready for it. Um, and when she asked me, it sort of set off this kind of like, oh, I should probably start getting ready for that kind of opportunity because I want to feel ready and I want to feel confident that I could do it. And so I started listening to different kinds of like there's a series called from Robert Greenberg with the Great Courses. I don't know if you've heard of that. And I started listening to all of his lectures and just felt like there was a divide between me as a like non-classical composer, non-orchestral musician that I would never find that bridge over to experiencing what that is to work with an orchestra, even though I wanted to do it. And as I was listening to that, I was like, I think I'm ready and I think I would like to do it. And I wonder how I could get that opportunity. I'll have to write all these pieces and like just knock on doors. And that day she wrote me an email and was like,
Oh,
I have this opportunity.
really?
It really was a kind of thing of like, and that it was a long wait. Like it seems like it was instant, but between 2020 and 2024 or 20, I think it was 2024 when you reached out. It was like a long time of feeling like I needed to get a foundation of understanding the orchestra and understanding the history of music and studying what's possible with orchestra. Because as a jazz musician, I went to Humber College and did the jazz program there. I just felt like very like it was not okay for me to approach that music. Somehow I didn't have the pedigree or the history or whatever. And so yeah, Laura emailed me that day and it was very easy to say like, yes, I want to do it. I've been working on it for a while and I think I'm ready.
So wonderful. It seemed like Alexis that there was this slow growth of ideas. I was kind of hearing for a few bubbles of gurgles of ideas happening, and then all of a sudden, boom! It seemed like we had a concerto. But of course, it was much more methodical for you. The process was longer for you. Can you share some details about that? Thinking about to when you started sketching out the piece, and Laura too. I want to hear about what those early conversations were like. So, Alexis, when did you start actually writing and sketching?
Well, when we first agreed that we were going to do that, I usually work pretty well with deadlines, just being accustomed to television deadlines where you have like a week to write 30 minutes of music. It's a little bit easier because there's a story that you are like writing music to that thing. So in a way, it's kind of following a blueprint with no blueprint, with no direction, and with the vast capability possibilities of an orchestra is really overwhelming and intimidating to think of like how do you even start, what's the start of a piece. And there's also the hurdles of you start something and it sounds too much like one composer or another and then you talk yourself out of going forward with that. So I had a lot of starts and stops where I would start with one theme or one idea, and it just didn't feel right. But I was nervous about starting from scratch each time. And I think I had maybe 4 or 5 different starts versions where I would get 3 or 4 minutes into the piece and just couldn't find my way forward. And there was a point where I was like, I think I have to think of this like a cue, like what I know how to do, which is write these shorter cues, 3 minute cues, 4 minute cues. And when it really unlocks for me is when there's a story or a picture. And so I felt like I had to write my own story and write a sort of scene that I had to write music to. And that kind of made it a little bit easier. And when I thought about like ideas, the theme of the piece, and connecting it to Laura and I, the main root was that it was such a beautiful thing that Laura would think of me. And the conversations we had when we were students and the fears that we had about like, we're investing so much money and time into this career where we're constantly given these messages of like, it's very hard to make a living. You have debt for a long time. It's really competitive. And you hear musicians that are in your idea, in your mind, they seem worlds better. And you can easily talk yourself into like, I could never compete. I have nothing to say compared to this beautiful musician that I'm going to school with or that is teach me or whatever. There's a lot of mental game that you have to get past. And I thought it would be a really interesting theme story about our own story of meeting and being scared as musicians at USC in America, and then how the doors we had to kind of open and go through, the things we had to knock on to just keep moving forward because we, at the end of it, had no other choice really, whether we wanted to or not. There was something in us saying, but we have something to say. We want to, we're musicians. This is the only thing we really know how to do. And what are we going to do to keep making it? And so that we had this friendship that was sparked as Canadians in America, and that, and also the bonding of like kind of uncertainty of our own ability to make it, but that we were going to die trying. And that we stuck together a little bit. And then because life kind of got in the way, eventually, like the emails became less and less. We didn't see each other. We were in different places, but that we had sort of had our friendship as a kind of core and the support of like, we're going to just see, we'll just see, we'll keep going. And that we, because of immigration, Laura had to go back. And also, you had like a partner in Toronto, and so I didn't have as many ties, and so I stuck around in Los Angeles. Laura went back to Toronto, but we kind of kept our heads down, weren't really in touch. It wasn't as if we were calling each other every month to say like, I didn't get this audition, I didn't get this television show, I'm devastated. Our friendship was kind of quiet in the background, but we were just working. And every now and then, I think like I don't know how many times we talked over this like 6 or 7 year period. But just like touching down to be like, you're still working? I'm still working. Okay. It hasn't like quite taken off. We're not like completely set, but let's keep going. And there's something comforting to me of seeing a friend just quietly going after it and knowing that we're kind of connected in the same way of like, we're not sure if it's going to work, but this is just the path we're on and we're going to keep going. And there's something that makes you go like, okay, I'm going to finish this one project. I'm going to finish this one piece. Um, and so basically that was the idea of the story is how do I tell that story of two friends, kind of immigrants or international students in America connected through that, worried about the future, but kept going. And then the end of the piece, when we both had enough power of our own to be able to create a piece of music together. And whether we go on to like great heights or whatever, it's more just the story of like, it's maybe not as triumphant as we think it might be, but it's the story of a friendship and working alongside of each other and then supporting each other where we could. And I think that I feel really lucky and I think it's incredibly generous to be commissioned by someone who has never heard my work for orchestra, but has enough faith to say, like, I'm going to take my first chance to be a concerto flautist and I'm going to share it with you. And there's some like band of brothers type energy there
Yeah,
where we're like able
totally.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, and just kind of showed up for each other, even though we're not like in touch. It's not as if like Laura and I are sisters or,
No.
whatever. But
No.
that yeah, she has just been a steady friend without
Mm.
all the benefits of friendships of like constant calls, support, money, whatever, like all these things. It's just been a
Yeah.
like, no, we had some connection in California and stuck through that and supported each other. And
But I
this is,
think that what you two have formulated is you're kind of manifesting through this concerto a very, very common path for a creative, aspiring creative person, and as well you have this shared experience of young motherhood as well. And gosh, I just think that all the different threads and the different synergies. Do you remember to those early conversations, Laura, with Alexis, kind of sketching I guess it sounds like you sort of sketched out the story together.
Yeah, I mean, I think we both sort of when we reconnected, when I asked her to do this piece, we were kind of like, yeah, it's kind of amazing that we're at this point where we can have this opportunity together. It's something new for both of us, and it feels very like full circle to kind of have thought. I think it was Alexis who was kind of like, you remember back when we went on this epic camping trip to Big Sur, and we had like these campfire talks about like how terrified we were of being artists and musicians and all the chances we were taking. There's something about being, I mean, well, I guess debatably now, America is in some ways very similar to Canada, in other ways very different. And there's something about not being where you're from also, and then finding someone who kind of understood the things that you can't really articulate about what it means to be from somewhere else. And all of that wrapped into one. So yeah, we just kind of started reminiscing about that sort of stuff because we had done things like Alexis has this beautiful singer-songwriter project. They had come to town a couple times. I'd gone to see the shows or checked out things online that she was doing because she's on social media, and I was always excited to see that kind of stuff. But she's right, we weren't sort of calling each other every day, and so it was like this epic phone call where we were kind of like, "What's going on in your life?" I remember
That's
when she
awesome.
had her son, when I had my son, and we were kind of just catching up. And then,
You have a daughter, you don't have a son, but that's
oh,
okay.
that's right. See, that's it. She's
I'm gonna
two, and I
go.
don't sleep very much. And so, no, I have a lovely daughter. That's right. Thank you, Andrew. So yeah,
Cool.
we're chatting about that, and then we kind of got into the more technical side of things, where there was a
Yes.
period of time where she was sort of sending me like, "What do you think of this piece?" or "I love this flute composer," or "I love this performer," and she
You're
was very
creating a
open.
mood board. You're creating a
Yeah,
mood board for what
totally.
the new thing would be.
And very
That's
open
fan-
to me kind of sending my stuff. So being like, who do you love
yeah.
to listen to? What do you love to play? What kind of, and I think sometimes I trend a little differently as a flute player. The stuff I love most is sort of like the colors and the harmony and the things that I can do there as opposed to the really flashy things. And so it was really exciting to be able to be like, of course, flash and virtuosity is important, but where my heart lies is in, those Baroque chord changes and things like that. And here's the music that really lights me up inside and so creating this sort of like shared inspiration mood board that then Alexis took off and started writing with.
So when you're preparing for a concerto, Laura, what does that look like? This is not something that you do every day of the week, right? Playing concertos around the world. So what has this process looked like for you?
Yeah, it's super new. I've premiered pieces before as part of a chamber group or, in an orchestral setting, but I've never had the chance to be this involved. And so at a certain point, Alexis was kind of like, I've got stuff for you. And she sent, actually, some of it trickled in at the beginning, kind of like, here's this opening idea. And then there was sort of more that came all at once. And we went through a process together, which was really challenging and cool. And I'm really grateful that we were both open to that, where I was kind of like, I love this, but I want more here. And sort of what Alexis alluded to with her film background, I think she's exceptionally open to edits, maybe because that's something that happens a lot when she's writing for film. And so she'd immediately be like, great, yeah, tell me what you want. And I can try and do that. Or she had me singing things. Like she was like, improvise something, show me. And I was like, I don't even know if I can like do that on my flute without music. Which is, a scary thing for me as someone who works from the page a lot. And so I was trying to improvise on my flute. And then I was like, actually, I know what I want in my head. So I'm just going to record these beautiful. I'm sure there were beautiful recordings of me singing over top of a MIDI recording that she sent of the piece of some of the things that I thought I could hear. And then she was able to sort of take that and realize it and send it back. So that was kind of the process we went through at the very end of sort of like tweaking things. And
Mhm.
then for me, the practicing process has been really intense. It's been very like short-lived, but rewarding. And I think I'm kind of when a composer, so she has this beautiful narrative that's gone with the piece, and I receive that. And I'm someone who, from a really early age, that's like why I think I became a musician. As a kid, I just loved being like, what's this story about? This piece is about a bunny. It's going on an epic journey to get a carrot. I'm going to play that. And so I was like, I need to find that. I think in my career, there's been this kind of arc of like, I was in, as a young musician, very comfortable with my storytelling. And then there was sort of all those voices that come in and critique your storytelling, your technique, the way you do things. And I got really kind of like, I have to do it the way that it's supposed to be done. And so I've been going through a process lately of trying to be like, I have a good colleague who sort of was like, you've really got to celebrate or embrace and sort of blow up in a good way the things that you do that are special. And I was like, well, what is the thing that I do? And I was like, I think storytelling is part of that. And so I took Alexis's story and I've been kind of going through the music. And of course, I've been like practicing with my metronome and shedding and doing all of those things. But I've also been kind of like, my score looks wild right now. And there's just like, like this morning I was working on the first movement and it's about the sky and looking up. So I have like looking up with hope. And then there's this little moment where I'm like, oh, it's like I'm trying out my wings and I'm trying to feel like what that feels like. And so I'm crafting my own story of like where it's related to the one that comes with the narrative of the piece, but also I'm, picturing a character in my head a little bit. I mean, I'm very much in motherhood right now. And so there's a part of also where I'm like, what if my daughter who's 2, like, what does she see when she looks up at the sky
Mm,
and like
mm,
how open and big and amazing and vast and warm and not scary is the
hmm
world. Yeah. So
hmm
it's about, I think that's where my process is at. And then it's always that kind of balance of like the artistic, super fun part and then the technical part. So there will be now I'm moving into we're about a week and a bit out. And so I'm moving very much into sort of like playing it for colleagues, trying to get out the nerves of, or I mean,
Yeah.
I still have nerves, I'm sure, on the day, but trying to like learn how to feel those. And I'm trying not to get too much feedback, but I think um,
Mhm.
taking in some ideas to see if my ideas are translating. I think that's the big thing.
Amazing.
Sometimes when you're in your practice room, you think everything is sounding the way you
Yeah.
imagine it is, and then it doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's totally awesome. And just hearing how you're extending the narrative that's presented to you and you're kind of using your imagination to its fullest extent. That's a beautiful thing. So let's dive in just a little bit of the piece itself, Alexis. So the concerto's called View of a Cartwheel from an Ascending Plane. It's in 6 parts, including the opening prelude where the flute gives all of that thematic material. And in the preface, it says that the concerto was influenced by 3 distinct threads: the vastness of the Canadian prairies, the evolution of a friendship, which we've talked about, and the trajectory of personal ambition. Self-explanatory. So the sky is after the flute gives that prelude, then there's this second movement called sky, openness. What I hear? This endless possibilities. But this is the Manitoba sky.
Yes.
And this, so when you think of the Manitoba sky as different than the Californian sky, like what does that mean to you? What does that translate to?
Well, I grew up in Winnipeg and spent my youth basically, once I started playing music, was feeling like it's not here. It's somewhere else. It's in Toronto. It's in Los Angeles, whatever it is, like the thing I'm after. And so thankfully, my parents were really supportive and they helped me get to Toronto and I trained there and I tried to get work there. And everyone was like, you got to go to Los Angeles. No one's going to take you seriously unless you go to LA. So I was like, great, go to Los Angeles. But the whole time I was still like, but I'm from Manitoba. My home is in Winnipeg. And how do I get back there in order to make a living making music? Like, what is the thing that I have to do where someone will just hire me to write music and I can just go back home? And everything has been sort of like in pursuit of that until I had my own family now in Cincinnati. And now Cincinnati, wherever my son is my home. But I have this longing for Manitoba and Winnipeg. My parents are still there. My sister is there. All of my family is there. And I just think about it a lot. And if I was thinking about what I wanted to be inspired by, And the idea of ambition, I had to tie it back to my own story of growing up in the prairies in this beautiful setting that I think a lot of the times the things that I heard was like Manitoba's the most boring part of Canada to drive through. It's super flat, you'll fall asleep. There's nothing really going on there. It's just kind of in the middle. But I still was longing for that the more I went away, which is a classic story of, people who like have ambitions and just really want to get back home. And so I wanted to not that I wanted, it was just sort of like that was the story that was coming out is that I missed home and I wanted to include that as a like beginning. And the
Mm,
beginning was me in Manitoba and then the journey of like starting somewhere beautiful where the sky is so open, there's so many possibilities. And I felt that there's so many possibilities. I'm going to go after all of them. And so it all started in Manitoba. And then also just like, yeah, those kind of like the parallels of the open landscape and the open future that you have so many
hmm
choices of
hmm
what to do. But
And then,
also,
and oh, go
sorry,
ahead,
also
go ahead.
connected to that is that where I started actually putting pen to paper after I wrote the prelude was at an artist residency in southern Manitoba
Right.
in New Bergthal, Manitoba. Sorry, I'm losing my voice.
Mm,
But in New Bergthal, Manitoba, there was a place that we stayed at, Dan and I, my partner, for 10 days, where every day we had a schedule of waking up, going for a walk in the prairies, in the canola fields, and then getting to work and writing all day. And it's something that we never have time for. We're always hustling for a gig, we're always working toward a
mm,
deadline. This allowed us time to simply write and not have it be necessarily something that had to be finished by the end of it. We could take our time to go down different
mm,
roads and try different themes. Well, for me as a writer, trying different themes. And it was just every day being in the prairies, infused the themes and the intervals, all those kinds of things. And so that's where Manitoba is, that I wrote it in Manitoba. That was important and connected to the story of beginnings.
amazing, amazing. So, after the sky, and we hear this Manitoba sky and this, and you've alluded to the elements that kind of form the bedding for this whole work. Then we hear engine, we hear lift. I kind of understand, in terms of career arc. You're cranking it up, these percussion rhythms get going, the work is beginning, but it's still lighthearted and carefree in that engine movement. In lift, I hear that there's more serious tone. There's a more kind of consistent pull along, and then we hit earth. Tell me about earth.
Yeah, basically, it's the first like big heartbreak in your career where like you think it's just all ascension. And then something happens. For me, it was I had moved out of Los Angeles and the show that I was working on just ended and try audition for a couple different shows and just for whatever reason the producers were going in a different direction and so I was kind of left without all this momentum had just stopped suddenly. And then I kind of fell back down to earth and was by myself and had to figure out like where do I go from here? I thought if you put in all this work, it's just straight up and opportunities come and then I hit this kind of like, oh, there's this valley here. And that's what Earth is the like I would say it's like mid-career, but it's a just sort of like when things don't go according to what you had been working to and the disappointment that kind of makes you reckon with like, oh, is this where I quit? Is this where I find another career, switch paths, whatever, which is totally legitimate. But it is a point where you make that decision. The opportunities have kind of dried up, and I don't know if they're coming back. And either I start creating my own opportunities or I write anyway. And so Earth is just about that kind of like you kind of are trying to turn over the engine, and the music reflects that with these like steady swells that just
Mm,
stop and
mm,
you and Laura's like repeating a figure going faster like you're still trying and it just you're not nothing sticking, there's no response from wherever you're sending it out to until she's ultimately by herself and then starts going into extended flute techniques which is like where you're really lost. You're like in Abstractville of like, I don't even know. Like the melodies aren't working, the harmonies aren't working. It gets weird. And then we end with, and this is what we'll see if this part of the piece works, is her playing whistle tones, incredibly quiet, almost totally snuffed out of, I have nothing left to give, and I don't know if it's going to work. And then there's the choice that leads into the final movement of, does she keep on going or does she quit? And what we're hearing is her freedom of, I finally let go of this dream that I thought I had to hang on to. And I think there's two different ways you can interpret that, is that it did get snuffed out, but actually there's happiness on the other side of a dream, a failed dream, or it did get snuffed out and then you rub the like stick
Oh,
super like create a new spark,
yeah.
and you're less inhibited by, is this going the way it should be, and I'm using other flautist careers to measure that, or I'm gonna make it my own thing and I don't know what it's gonna be, and that's the most exciting part of it, and it's complete liftoff because it doesn't matter if you get the audition after that, it doesn't matter if it's successful or whatever, you've found a way to feel satisfied playing by yourself.
Mm. That's beautiful. I've had the pleasure of listening to like so far just MIDI mock-ups, right, of this piece. I love it. It's just such beautiful writing. I'm so looking forward to collaborating with you both as we bring this concert together. This is our season finale, Beethoven, Shostakovich, and Marsh on May the 2nd. Thank you so much for joining me today, Laura. Thank you so much for joining me, Alexis.
Pleasure. Thank you.